It was the morning after my husband's funeral. Dawn was breaking, and I could still smell the fresh earth, lingering at the edge of my senses. I walked slowly down the hallway, my eyes barely open, exhausted from a sleepless night. I'd cried into my pillow until there were no tears left, and now there was just emptiness. He'd only been gone one day, just one day, but the house felt eerily silent. The only sound? The old kitchen clock. Tick-tock, tick-tock, like someone holding their breath, watching. I stopped in front of his room. 50 years of our life together, stored behind that door. Out of habit, I reached into my pocket, pulled out the key, and slid it into the lock. But then, it wouldn't turn. I paused. Were my hands shaking? I tried again, turned the key slowly. Click, click, click. It wouldn't even go in all the way. What in the world? A chill ran down my spine. I grabbed the doorknob and rattled it hard. Nothing. The door was locked tight, and it wasn't budging. That's when I heard it. "Mother, you're up already?" A soft voice drifted from behind me. I turned. It was my daughter-in-law, her eyes darting nervously, her hands gripping the edge of her apron like she was holding on for dear life. "The door won't open," I said. "Why doesn't the key work?" She hesitated, just for a second, then forced a smile. "Oh, that. I was cleaning yesterday and, well, something came up. It's just complicated right now." She wouldn't look me in the eye, not once, and her feet, I noticed, were positioned right in front of the crack at the bottom of the door, like she was hiding something underneath. I stared at her quietly. This wasn't the same woman from the funeral home, the one who hadn't shed a single tear. No, this was someone afraid. "Give me the key," I said. "I need to go in." "Mother, not now. Please, not now." "Why not?" "It's just, I haven't finished tidying up yet." But her voice was trembling. That wasn't the voice of someone worried about tidying. That was the voice of someone hiding something. Someone scared. Someone who desperately didn't want me to see what was inside that room. I let go of the doorknob and stepped back slowly. But as I did, I noticed something. A faint glow coming from beneath the door. A small, red light. I knew that light. It was the recording light on my husband's old voice recorder, the one he'd held onto so tightly in his final months, the one he'd filled with recordings I'd never heard. He always said, "I'll let you listen someday," but he never did. And now, that recorder was in there, alone, blinking. The moment my daughter-in-law saw me notice the light, she shifted her foot to block it. Then, in a quiet voice, she said, "Mother, that room. Please don't go in there. Not for a while." It sounded like a warning, a plea, a confession trying to stay hidden. I stood there, speechless, and somewhere deep inside me, an old instinct stirred to life. Something about my husband's death is hidden in this house. I narrowed my eyes and looked at her carefully. "Tell me something," I said, my voice low and steady. "Who changed the lock on my husband's door?" She bit her lip hard and said nothing. That strange feeling I'd had at the door all night, it didn't go away. Even now, with morning sunlight pouring into the kitchen, it was still there. I filled the kettle slowly and stared out the window. Even the trees in the yard looked different today, unfamiliar. The house, without my husband, felt like it was holding its breath, And in that silence, all I could think about was that room, that locked room with the changed lock. My husband's last few months. I can't explain the way he acted. In his final months, my husband recorded something every single day. Without fail, some nights, he'd lock himself in that room for hours, muttering to himself. Other nights, he'd come home looking stiff, like he'd met someone in secret and didn't want to talk about it. I asked him all the time, "Why are you so on edge lately? Why are you writing things down, crossing them out, hiding them?" And he always said the same thing. "Someday, there's something you'll need to know." And then he'd add, "If I don't get the chance to tell you myself, you'll find everything in that room." Back then, I didn't think much of it. I hated when he talked about death. I remember getting upset with him. And now, I wish I hadn't. The funeral? Something wasn't right. At the funeral, my son kept checking his phone. My daughter-in-law never looked me in the eye. Not once. And then, when they sealed the casket, I saw it. She glanced toward his room, just for a second. But I'll never forget that look on her face. It was fear, like she was afraid of a secret that hadn't been buried with him. I was too grief-stricken to process it then. But now, looking back, it's clear she was already guarding that room, even at the funeral home. That morning at breakfast, I asked her gently, "You said you cleaned the room yesterday. Did you move any of his things?" Her face went pale, like she'd swallowed ice water. "Mother, we didn't want you to be overwhelmed. We were trying to help." Before she could finish, my son cut in, urgently. "Mom, just rest for now. Let's not touch Dad's room for a while, okay?" A chill ran through me. Even my son was blocking me from that room. Think about it. When your spouse passes away, of course you want to go into their room. Of course you do. But both of them were stopping me. And their faces? Ashen. Guilty. That afternoon, I opened the small dresser my husband used to keep by his desk. The one my daughter-in-law said she'd cleaned. 2 things were missing. His black journal, the one he'd written in for 20 years. The key to his safe. The small one he kept hidden for emergencies. That safe. He'd never once opened it in front of me. Not in all our years together. And now the key was gone. The journal was gone. I stood there, frozen. Who would take these? Why? And I kept seeing her face. My daughter-in-law's face. Fear. Secrecy. And guilt. By now, you'd think it's obvious. She's after the inheritance, right? But something didn't sit right with me. She didn't look greedy. She looked terrified. If she'd locked that door for money, if she was hiding the recorder for money, her face would have shown greed, not fear. But she looked like someone running away from something. And if that something was what my husband had recorded in his final months. That evening, while folding my husband's old clothes, I found a note tucked into one of his pockets. It said, "If I don't get the chance to tell you, the thing I was afraid of might still be inside this house." My breath caught. The thing he was afraid of, whatever it was it in that room? Is that why she won't let me in? It was all starting to make sense. That afternoon, I felt something off in my daughter-in-law's eyes. So I decided to look around the house, quietly. My body slowed down with age, but my instincts, the ones that kept this family safe for a lifetime, still sharp. I walked slowly down the hallway. Something in the air felt different. When I reached my husband's study, I stopped at the door. And that's when I realized something. It wasn't just the lock that had been changed. The entire door frame had been replaced. This wasn't a regular key lock. This was a high-security system, the kind my daughter-in-law could never install on her own. Who put this here? A cold feeling crept up to my fingertips. I checked the drawer one last time. My husband's black journal, the one he'd kept his entire life, and the key to his safe. Both gone without a trace. But in the corner of the drawer, I found something. A small metal scratch, like someone had scraped it with their fingernail. Someone had ripped a key off in a hurry. Someone had been frantic. Someone had been afraid. And someone had been in that room before me. I called my neighbor and asked about my daughter-in-law. I'd heard she'd been gone from the house a lot lately. The neighbor told me something I wasn't expecting. Your daughter-in-law? She's been going back and forth to the bank and a notary's office several times this week. I froze. For what reason? I'm not sure. She said she had things to take care of. She even went the day before the funeral. The day before the funeral? When my husband was in a coma? That's when the pieces started coming together. The safe key, gone. The journal, gone. The bank, the notary, my daughter-in-law. Anyone would think inheritance, document changes. That evening, as soon as my son came home, I asked him quietly, I heard your wife's been to a notary's office. He froze for a moment, then forced a smile. Mom, it's just paperwork. There was a lot to prepare for the funeral. That wasn't the tone of someone handling funeral arrangements. That was the tone of someone lying out of fear. I looked him straight in the eye. The key to your father's safe. Did you take it? He didn't deny it right away. He just went silent. And that silence said everything. My son spoke carefully. We hid it because we thought it would be too much of a shock for you. Dad's room. It's better if you don't go in there. Not for a while. That's when it hit me even harder. Something was wrong. Why worry about shock if it's just inheritance? Why use that word? And then my son's last words. What Dad was doing in that room. It's better if you don't know. Not yet. Those weren't the words of someone after an inheritance. They were the words of someone who knew. Someone threatened Dad. And the evidence is in that room. My son's eyes weren't filled with greed. They were filled with terror. That night, the house was quiet. But from my husband's room, I heard a sound. Click, click. Something was moving on its own. I walked closer, pressed my ear to the door, and I heard it clearly. Record. Delete. Password. It was my husband's voice, from the recorder, playing on a loop, like he was warning someone. And that's when I understood. My daughter-in-law didn't change the lock because of inheritance. What she was hiding, what my son was afraid of, the trips to the bank and notary, it was all to protect some kind of record. Something my husband left behind right before he died. But whether that record was meant to protect me or to keep me out, I still didn't know. My daughter-in-law came home from work a little after 8 that evening. The moment the front door opened, her eyes, they looked like a frightened animal's. I spoke quietly. Tonight, I need you to open your father-in-law's room. Her face went white. Mother, you can't go in there. Not now. Why not? Just not now, please. Her voice was almost breaking. This wasn't someone hiding greed. This was someone fighting fear. I asked again, what happened in that room? She avoided the question, steadying herself against the wall. Mother, when he was still alive, he told us never to go in there. Never. You remember that, don't you? Of course I did. In his last 3 months, my husband had kept that room sealed off. Obsessively. I asked slowly, "Is that why you changed the lock?" She bit her lip hard. Then, in a trembling voice, she said, "If you see what's in there, you'll never be able to live a normal life again." My daughter-in-law breaks down. When I pressed her again, asking what I wasn't supposed to see, she suddenly lost control. "You don't need to know. Can't you just forget about it, please?" She was never the type to raise her voice. Always calm, always quiet. But now, she was practically shouting at me to stay away. I kept my voice low. "Steady. That's my husband's room. I'm going in. Why are you stopping me?" She looked like she was about to collapse, fighting back tears. "Mother, we're not hiding anything. We're protecting something." "Protecting what?" "Something your husband was trying to protect, right up until he died." The way she said it, it didn't sound like money, or inheritance, or a will. It sounded like survival. Then my son came running in. She turned to him immediately, like she was seeking shelter. "Honey, she wants to open the room." My son looked at me, blank, emotionless. "Mom, please. You can't open that room. Not now." "Why not?" He clenched his fists, then released them. "It's not about Dad." "Then who is it about?" He couldn't answer, but he said something that made my blood run cold. "If you see what's in there, you'll be in danger too." I froze. "In danger? What are you talking about?" His eyes were shaking as he finally spoke. "Dad, in his last 2 months, he was fighting someone. You didn't know." While they were blocking the door, I slipped over to the study. There was a small storage closet next to it. My daughter-in-law had changed that lock too. At the bottom of the old wooden door, I saw burned paper, scraps of it, peeking out from underneath. I crouched down carefully and scraped the pieces together. Someone had burned documents. Recently, in a hurry. I pieced together what I could read. Insurance payout. Beneficiary change. Day before death. Sooner than expected. My breath stopped. Someone had burned insurance documents right before my husband died, and my daughter-in-law and son were hiding it. My daughter-in-law's voice was shaking as she said one last thing. "Mother, what's in that room? It's not about inheritance." She paused, swallowed hard. "It's a record of who made your husband die." The world went white, and then I understood. The lock wasn't changed to keep me out. It was changed to keep someone else out. But whether that someone was family or a stranger, I still didn't know. That night, I couldn't sleep, not for a single moment. My daughter-in-law's words kept echoing in my head. "What's in that room is a record of how your husband died." I thought he'd passed from illness. That's what I had to believe. That's what I had to accept. But the word, record, meant someone had left something behind, intentionally, and that someone could have been my husband himself, or someone else entirely. At 4 a.m, I got up quietly and stood outside my son and daughter-in-law's bedroom door. Through the crack at the bottom, I saw something glinting. Metal. A key. She must have kept it by the bed to feel safe. I knew her anxious habits too well. Slowly, very slowly, I reached through and pulled it out. I wasn't angry. I wasn't resentful. I just needed to know the truth. When the house fell silent, I stood in front of my husband's room. The new lock turned with a heavy click, and the door opened. The moment it did, a cold, damp smell poured out, like air that had been sealed away for too long. The first thing I saw was his desk, neat, like always, but one of the drawers looked unusually deep. I bent down and pulled it open. Clang! The metal drawer shot forward, revealing a hidden compartment inside. There were two things. 1. My husband's voice recorder, the one he used all the time. 2. A stack of documents, signed, but not in my husband's handwriting. The recorder had almost no dust on it. Someone had touched it recently. And the documents, they had my husband's signature, but it wasn't his handwriting, not the one I'd known my whole life. Below the signature, it was clearly labeled, Pre-Death Insurance Beneficiary Change Consent Form. Beneficiary, an outsider's name. Not my son, not my daughter-in-law, not anyone in our family. A name I'd never heard before. My breath caught. I almost dropped the paper. My hands were shaking as I pressed the play button on the recorder. If someone is listening to this, I'm probably already dead. It was his voice, really his, calm, but with a tremor of fear underneath. Someone's been coming into our house recently. Contracts have been changed without my knowledge. Someone claiming to be from the insurance company visited too. Someone? An insurance agent? The recording continued. The person I'm fighting isn't our family. I stopped cold. Not family? Then, who? It's too dangerous to say the name. But this person can only collect money if I die. Suddenly, there was a loud thud on the recording, like my husband had dropped something. If something happens to me, check the documents in this room first, and whatever you do, never. Then the recording cut off. My husband's last words never made it onto the tape. Footsteps sounded outside the room. The door flew open. My son and daughter-in-law rushed in together. Mother, please stop. My daughter-in-law was crying. If you see this, you'll be in danger too. We don't know who this person is either, but your husband was tormented before he died. And he said the person might be someone you know. I stared at her, stunned. All this time, the fear she'd shown, it wasn't greed. My son's voice was shaking too. Mom, the person Dad suspected could be someone close to you. Who? I whispered. My son bit his lip. There's a name Dad kept mentioning at the end. Someone you trusted most. Recently, I froze. On the recorder's label, there was a note scrawled in my husband's handwriting. This person got close. Through her. Her? My daughter-in-law? Or me? My son was trembling as he spoke. The last person you saw with him. The one who kept coming to visit. That person. My breath stopped. A face flashed in my mind. My husband's closest friend. The one who came and went freely in our house. The one who avoided eye contact throughout the funeral. And the last person to visit my husband before he died. My husband's old friend, Richard Harper. Less than 10 seconds after leaving my husband's room, my whole body started shaking. My fingertips went cold. My heart was pounding in my ears. What my son had just told me. This wasn't some simple family dispute. Someone you trusted most. Recently, those words cut right through me. I asked quietly, You mean Richard? My son nodded slowly. Dad said he was the one person he was most worried about. Right until the end. Richard Harper had been my husband's friend for 30 years. Like family. The one person who came and went from our house freely. I asked my son, how did he get close to us? My son took a deep breath. When Dad was in the hospital, Richard visited every single day. But every time he came, he talked about insurance. Insurance? The life insurance Dad took out when he was younger. He told Dad that if done right, he could change the beneficiary to someone outside the family. I looked over at my daughter-in-law. She kept her head down, voice breaking. When your husband was alone, Richard kept saying, all we need is your signature on the contract. He kept pushing. My son continued, remember when Dad was by himself for a few days? That's when Richard told the nurse he was family, and then handed Dad some papers. Papers? A beneficiary change consent form. I couldn't breathe. My son clenched his fists. Dad's signature. That's not his handwriting. He was forced to write it. Forced? By who? By Richard. My daughter-in-law burst into tears. Your husband was so weak. Richard held his hand and made him sign. The nurse saw it and tried to report it, but Richard said it was a family favor, so she let it go. I almost collapsed into the chair. The document my husband left before he died. The signature that didn't match his handwriting. The strange beneficiary change. And the recorder hidden in the room. The pieces were falling into place. My husband had been forced to sign a contract. He knew it. He was terrified, and he left a record behind to protect our family. But then, why did my son and daughter-in-law hide this from me? I asked quietly. Then, why did you keep this from me? My son looked away, bit his lip. Because, Mom, you trusted Richard so much. If you took his side, we'd be in danger too, and everything Dad recorded would be buried. My daughter-in-law added, that's why we locked the room. We were afraid you'd misunderstand and show it to Richard. If that happened, we'd be in real trouble. They hadn't deceived me. They'd been protecting me. It didn't take long to realize that. Then, the phone rang. It was past 11 at night. My son's face went pale. It's him again. Again? Ever since Dad died, the same number keeps calling. We traced it. It's Richard's number. My daughter-in-law stared at the phone, trembling. He knows what's inside this house. He knows we locked the room. The phone kept ringing, cold, persistent, like it was tearing through the air. I asked, my voice shaking. Don't answer it. I'll answer it. My son shouted. No, you can't. Don't answer it. But it was too late. I picked up the receiver and put it to my ear. It's been a while. That familiar voice. My husband's friend, Richard Harper. He laughed. Low, unpleasant. So you finally opened the room. My whole body froze. How did he know? And then he said, what's in that room? You should never have seen it. The voice on the other end of the line. It was familiar, but completely foreign at the same time. What's in that room? I told you, you shouldn't have seen it. I swallowed hard. Why? What's in there? He laughed, slowly, unpleasantly. What your husband was trying to protect at the end. It wasn't money. Those words felt cold, like ice scraping against bone. What do you want? My voice was shaking, but I gripped the receiver tighter. He spoke in an even lower voice. Give me the records. The documents, the recordings, all of it. My son and daughter-in-law's faces went pale. I whispered, "Why do you want them?" He was silent for a moment. Then he said, "If those records disappear, your family could have a very quiet life." It was a threat, but it wasn't just a threat. It was a hint that something was already in motion. As soon as I hung up, my son put both hands on his head. "Mom, there's something you don't know." "What?" "Dad and Richard. They made a joint investment years ago." "Investment?" "There was a lot of money. Money Dad kept hidden from you his entire life." I shook my head in disbelief. "Your father wasn't like that." I thought so too. But, according to Richard, Dad invested in something decades ago that's worth a fortune now. "In what?" My son's voice trembled. "Land. In a redevelopment zone. That's when everything connected." "The insurance money?" "No, that was just bait. Richard's real target was the land. The redevelopment property my husband left behind, worth tens of millions." My son handed me a second stack of documents from the room. Inside was a joint investment contract with both my husband's name and Richard Harper's name on it. But the last page had been torn. "Why?" my son said. "Before Dad died, Richard tried to take this contract from him in the hospital." "How do you know?" "I checked the hospital security footage. A few days ago, his hands were shaking. He tried to force Dad to sign something. When Dad refused, he shook him." I almost screamed. After that day, Dad started losing his clarity. He couldn't speak well anymore. "What are you saying?" My son looked down. Dad's decline might not have been just from the illness. I stared at my daughter-in-law, eyes wide. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "On his last day, he told me, 'Protect your mother,'" he said. "Richard is using you." Those words stabbed me in the chest. "Using me?" My daughter-in-law nodded. "Richard knew that you trusted him even more than you trusted your husband, so he tried to pressure Dad. Through you." I could barely breathe. "That's why we locked the room. If you showed those documents to Richard, it would all be over." My daughter-in-law carefully pulled out a small note from inside the recorder. A note my husband had left. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. In my husband's handwriting, the last sentence read, "He got close. Not because of me, because of you." My breath stopped. "Because of me?" My son nodded faintly. "He was after your signature authority, the co-ownership of the redevelopment property. It wasn't in Dad's name. It was in yours." I covered my mouth with my hand. The secret my husband never told me. Land in my name. Documents I never knew existed. And the reason Richard had been so kind to me all these years. It all came together. Richard's real goal was my signature. What my husband was hiding wasn't his own life. It was my signature authority. In that moment, I remembered my husband's last look. His breath weak, but his hand gripping mine tightly. That hand wasn't holding on to save himself. It was holding on to protect me. Richard's voice on the phone. It felt like it froze the entire kitchen. "Those documents, those recordings, hand them over." He exhaled slowly. "They were mine to begin with. I couldn't run anymore." I asked quietly, "Why did you do this to us?" He laughed bitterly. "Your husband betrayed me first. If we invested together, we should have split the money together. My husband cut ties with you before that land became a redevelopment zone." "Exactly. That's the problem. Richard's voice suddenly rose. He knew that land would be worth tens of millions, and he never told me. My son's face twisted. So, you threatened him? I was just taking back what was mine. That was a complete lie. My son shouted. Was Dad's death really from illness? The line went silent. Then came a low, cold voice. No one can say for sure. That answer was as good as a confession. My hands were shaking as I pressed play on the last recording. If you're hearing this message, I'm already gone. My son and daughter-in-law held their breath. Richard and I invested together when we were young, but he secretly removed my name from one of the deals. Secretly? My son gasped, covering his mouth. So after that, I transferred everything into my wife's name. My name? I almost dropped the recorder. He doesn't need me. He needs her signature to get that land. The recording continued. So, from the start, his target wasn't me. It was her. Her. Me. My son's voice trembled. That's why Dad tried so hard to protect you. My daughter-in-law was crying. That's why he locked the room. Why he hid the documents. I understand now. My husband's voice came one last time. Honey, never meet him alone. And I love you. Those last words broke me. Richard must have known we'd heard the recording. Erase it. I spoke without a tremor. Don't contact me again. He scoffed. You still have the documents. Yes, and you don't. That's when my son handed me a small USB drive. Mom, this is the hospital security footage. Everything he did in Dad's room. It's all here. I exhaled. Let's take this to the police. For the first time, I heard panic on the other end. The police? Do you know what you're doing? Yes. I'm going to make sure someone like you is held accountable. After a pause, Richard inhaled sharply. Your husband fought me to the end. Are you going to do the same? I answered immediately. He wasn't running. He was protecting me. I hung up. The house went quiet. Richard couldn't come near us anymore. Legal evidence, recordings, security footage, all in my hands. A few days later, we met with a lawyer and submitted everything. Richard couldn't avoid the investigation, the coercion, the hospital intrusion, the attempted fraud with insurance and property documents. It all came to light. He could never come near our family again. And I became the rightful owner of the redevelopment property my husband left behind. My son said quietly, Mom, this isn't just money. This is what Dad left you. The power to protect yourself. My daughter-in-law held my hand. Mother, he trusted you. Until the very end. I went into the room and sat in front of my husband's photograph. You protected me all the way to the end. And after that day, I learned something. Love doesn't end with words. It remains in the choice to protect someone. What my husband left me wasn't land. It wasn't money. It was the value of protecting myself. I opened the window, felt the breeze come in, and whispered softly, Because of you, I'm living my life again. Thank you.